Is it time to strip Prince Andrew of all his royal titles and roles? Why will a new report have hurt Prince Harry? Whose yacht have William and Catherine been holidaying on? And what can we expect from the next royal wedding? We've got quite the show for you today. Hello and welcome to Palace Confidential, your weekly royal show, your favourite weekly royal show, I hope, I'm sure. I'm Jo Elvin, and on the panel today is the Daily Mail's royal editor, Rebecca English, and the double dose of Richards. Welcome back to Messieurs Kay and Eden. Great to have you all. Now, a reminder that for more great royal shows, you need to subscribe to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel. That way, you'll never miss an episode of our regular Thursday show, or any of our special episodes like the interview we did with Prince Andrew's biographer Andrew Lownie that went out yesterday. If you missed that, it's going to play straight after this. And if you don't already, why not subscribe to our completely relaunched but still free Palace Confidential newsletter? You can click the link in the description below or just scan the QR code on screen now with your phone's camera. It is the brilliant, perfect way to stay up to date on all royal news from the Mail's expert team. Okay, let's get into it. We're going to start this epic show this week with the publication of an extraordinary biography of Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. Everybody's talking about it. It's called Entitled by Andrew Lownie, and it charts what it calls the rise and fall of the House of York. And I think it's safe to say it's a bombshell. Richard Eden, I'm going to come to you straight away. Hard to see how anybody could walk away from the details in this book and still claim to be a fan of Prince Andrew.
My goodness, yeah. I mean, it's been quite a sort of difficult read at times, quite sort of almost unpleasant.
Well, and even the author himself said he struggled to find people to say nice things.
Yes,
in the the interest of balance.
Mr. Lownie said he's approached, I think, literally thousands of people,
yes,
talked to hundreds, but has struggled to find anyone with a good word to say about Andrew. I mean, you kind of feel that there must be a good side to him. I mean, for me, when I think of Andrew as well, I think of him as that, war hero from the Falklands conflict. He was flying decoy missions, which was the most dangerous missions you could have. It wasn't like Harry in Afghanistan where he was at a base very well protected. So there's that. And the other thing that I've always admired about him greatly was that despite divorcing his wife Sarah, they've managed to stay pretty closely as a family unit, and they've raised two girls of which to be very proud. So I thought they've always been a great example of how you can split up with your other half, keep it very civil, and set a good example. So those are the good points.
So maybe Andrew Lownie should have come to you for the nice things.
Well, those are the good points, but then there's lots of negative stuff, and a lot of the allegations have really been, sort of eye-wateringly revolting and explosive.
Well, speaking of, Rebecca, unsurprisingly, Andrew's links to the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein are a huge part of the book, and this book claims that his connections go both deeper and back further than he has previously claimed.
Yeah, because I think the general acceptance is that Andrew met Epstein sometime around 1999. But Lownie says actually their relationship goes back further than that, possibly even as far as 10 years that they were operating in the same circles, and that Epstein pretty much spotted straight away that Andrew could very much be a useful idiot to him. I think he
that phrase follows him around, doesn't it?
It does, yes, and describes kind of almost like, Andrew as kind of a mouse being dangled in a snake pit with him, and Andrew just not seeing what was coming down the tracks. So he's pretty revelatory and pretty scathing about Andrew's relationship with Epstein.
Well, and there's also, Richard Kay, this reported scale of his appetite for sex. This is a fun conversation, isn't it? It's like particularly unedifying, including romances with Ghislaine Maxwell, and the extraordinary claim that Andrew and Bill Clinton shared a mistress. Is it fair to say that it's a weakness for Andrew?
Well, I think sex probably has been a weakness for Andrew, and I think has is the operative word, because I think it was a long time ago. We don't know about the full extent of his womanising. I've read many reports over the years about what an appetite he had. Indeed, I probably wrote some of the stories 20 or 30 years ago. But he's also someone who was pretty much painted as a dull, boring man whose interests were not in the bedroom but on the golf course, on the computer screen, who didn't really have a great sophisticated skill in wooing women. It seems to me, and I think Lownie puts his finger on it, that a lot of these women were more or less sort of proffered to him, offered up, if you like, simply because he was a prince, he could do whatever he liked. Now, whether all these allegations are true, I'm not entirely sure. I mean, one of the reasons why his marriage failed was that he was not a very attentive husband. And I'm using that in a guarded way. So I think there's a lot more to Andrew than perhaps at first sight greets the eye.
So where did this, do you remember when I was a kid back in the 80s, that the Randy Andy title that followed him around like a badge of honour almost?
Well, he was probably one of the most charismatic, I would say, of the Queen's children, wasn't he?
Well, he was the best looking at
Yes.
that time, in contrast with Charles and his big ears, and the rather gauche Edward. Andrew seemed to have the full package. And he was associated. I mean, I wrote endless stories about his girlfriends, who was in and who was out. And then along came Fergie. And I've got to take issue with one thing that Richard said about how he admires the fact that they've stuck together for something like 26 years after their divorce. But in many ways, she's been the reason for his downfall. And in fact, he may have been far better off absolutely jettisoning her. And I agree completely with him that they've produced two wonderful young women in Beatrice and Eugenie. They've grown up amid all this wreckage of domestic disharmony, and they've emerged as two confident, bright women. But I'm not sure that Andrew and Fergie as an item have been good for each other or for the monarchy or for Britain.
It's interesting because that's my next question to you, Richard Eden, is about Sarah Ferguson, who's also a big part of the book. Particularly her jaw-dropping spending and what Lownie calls her questionable charitable activities that come under the spotlight.
Yes, true. I mean, but it is pretty old stuff. It goes back a long way, decades in some cases, and the person who's spoken about it most in the past is Sarah herself, who's written memoirs, and she's talked about. Remember, that's sort of why she got that big deal for Weight Watchers, was because she put on a lot of weight and then she lost it, and she admitted to being something of a spendthrift, I think. So she's admitted that. But I think the thing personally I've always loved about Fergie is that she sort of bounces back. And there's always something new. I think like our readers have always wanted to read about her because she's one of those people that there's always something happening. She doesn't let, some people, something bad happens in their life, they just get down, they don't want to move on, but she'll always bounce back and have a new project or something exciting, whatever it is to talk about.
I always feel like there's an air of chaos.
Displacement activity, that's what it is.
I don't know if it'd be chaos, but energy, perhaps you could say.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, tomato. But is it fair to say, Rebecca? I mean, what do you think will be the fallout for the Yorks, and do you think that Fergie may weather it better than Andrew and come out of it better?
That's a good point. I do think Sarah will weather it better because I think actually both colleagues are right in their various ways that a lot of the stuff we'd read about her is stuff that we know about her. It's always very unedifying to have it all put in one place and laid out in front of you. I mean, I've written many stories back in the day about her running up huge bills in small companies in and around Windsor where they left, kind of bills that could have put small companies out of business, So and that was kind of, 15, 20 years ago, so this stuff is well trodden, but as I say, it's awkward to see it all put there together, but I don't think there's going to be anything there that people go, I didn't know. And I think Fergie's one of those people that people have tend to made up their minds by now about. I think they either think, she's a permanent car crash waiting to happen, or she's made some huge mistakes in her life, but actually, as Richard said, she's always bounced back and is now a bit of a kind of national treasure. I think you pays your money and you takes your choice. I think Andrew it's less certain on because, of course, some of the charges laid at his feet are verging on the criminal. I have been over the years, and while nothing's ever been expressly proved against him, there is a huge cloud hanging over his head, and I don't think this will ever go away. Yeah. And it's a reminder, I think, why the royal family are in such a very difficult position over what to do with the problem that is Prince Andrew.
Well, we'll come to that. But Richard Kate, just harking back to what you were saying about, you know, the union of this pair and the influence it's had on the monarchy. Do you think that Sarah Ferguson's a national treasure? And I wondered if you might agree with Lownie's perception that she had this disproportionate control over Andrew.
I would agree with Lownie's assertion that it was Fergie who's been leading Andrew in everything, if you like. I think the reason Andrew got so involved financially with Jeffrey Epstein was to help solve one of Fergie's many financial crises. He got, as we all know, he got money to pay off one of her debts. But no, I don't think she's a national treasure. I think she's a hidebound woman who has not been good, as I said, for the institution, for the monarchy. Rebecca touches on what can the royal family do, and there's very little they can actually do. He's been effectively sacked. He's the only royal prince who's been sacked from public life I can think of, short of sending him far, far away. And who would want him? I think it's very insulting when I keep reading, we could send him to the Falkland Islands as a governor. Do the people of the Falkland Islands particularly want Prince Andrew? I doubt it very much. So it's difficult to know what to do with him. He's just going to be there. I mean, they have managed it fairly well. He doesn't have any kind of public role. What else? You said in your introduction, what about stripping him of everything? Well, he's born a prince. He was given a dukedom. The one thing they could possibly remove would be the dukedom, but I think it would have to come through Parliament, and I can't see any government of any shade wanting to get involved with anything like this. It will open up a real can of worms. So what else can they do?
What about things like his Vice Admiralty, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, he's got honorary military titles, but does he use those anymore?
So,
they're in abeyance,
Yeah. It's a hugely tricky one for them because he is there and he exists and they can't airbrush him out that he is a member of their family.
And there is within the family, and I know this as Rebecca does, there's always an instinct to sort of circle the horses, circle the wagons, protect one of their own. Their first response in all these cases is, it's just the press, it's the media.
Yeah.
This is different. This is a graphic book written by a figure who's got some substance in the writings he's done. And you can't just brush this away. However, it does go over a lot of old territory. And they'll just feel, I think, poor old Andrew, when's someone going to give him a break?
It's not that you to be quiet when we talk about Andrew and his titles, Richard. How do you feel?
Well, I mean, certainly what the king could do, and something I've advocated for a long while, is strip him of his role as a counsellor of state. I mean, it's easy to forget.
One, I know this is your bugbear. Yes.
No, but think about it. We're talking about Andrew, he's so appalling, he's done this, he's done that. But he and Prince Harry can still have the legal right to deputise for the king. That could easily be stripped from them, as well as his title of Duke of York or other things if they wanted to. He's still in the line of succession. And it would take an act of Parliament, but that's no big deal. The king did it recently when he extended the list of councillors of state to include Princess Anne and Prince Edward. It could be done very easily indeed. So, that's something that I would suggest strongly that he does.
There are claims in the book, now contested, I should add, about Prince Harry's relationship with Uncle Andy. What's been said about that?
God, this is so interesting and really quite mysterious as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's an incident in Lownie's book that he says that Harry was upset because he caught Prince Andrew saying something behind his back. Now, certainly in the serialisation, it hasn't gone into what that was that Andrew had said. But Harry was so angry that he got in a physical fight with Andrew and punched him, left him with a black eye. Well, I should say that since publication, Prince Harry's people have put out a statement saying they deny this, it's not true, and also denying that another claim in the book, which is that Andrew had made derogatory comments about Meghan and had warned Harry about her and about her past, and had really said, are you sure you're wise to go ahead with this marriage? So very intriguing, but it has been denied. So I look forward to reading the book in a bit more detail.
Away from putting those incidents aside, the alleged incidents, Richard Kate, you can imagine that Harry and Meghan are just aghast at being anywhere near associated with these
absolutely.
claims.
I mean, I think they've done as much as they can to sort of distance themselves from the whole York fiasco as anyone else. There are similarities between Andrew and Harry. We've talked about them before. They're both second sons. They both served with distinction in the services, and they've both been lost, very lost in Andrew's case, and probably the same is true of Harry. So yes, and they will be horrified to be dragged into this, but they also have a friendship with Andrew's children, Andrew's daughters, of course, and so it is complicated. Families are always difficult. There are various dynamics at play here, but no, I don't think Harry will have been at all pleased to have been dragged into this. Do you agree?
I agree.
But what about the princesses? I mean, we've all given them glowing reviews on this very show. How must they be feeling about
Awful.
this book? Yeah.
I'm sure they're embarrassed, and it's just
Upset,
very difficult.
I think it hurts them. I mean,
usually he's one of Harry's closest friends and family members, and it still sees Harry and Meghan. So it is hard to imagine that she would be so close to him if, Harry had been literally physically fighting with his uncle. But no, I think obviously this book's very awkward for them, and I presume they've just become used to this sort of stuff over the past few years.
Well, we'll have more on Harry and Meghan after the comments. But carrying on with this, Rebecca, there are even more worrying claims coming out in this book that Andrew had some links to foreign spies in ways that had potentially very serious consequences.
Yes, and obviously you've seen some of this raised recently with his interactions with a Chinese spy.
Alleged
Chinese spy.
Yeah.
That hit the headlines fairly recently. But the book says that basically Andrew's behaviour has been so reckless over the years that reports have gone back on him to Russia, to China, to Libya, to Saudi Arabia, to basically any state that would benefit from hostile information about a member of the establishment or our royal family. And he says that some of the information would be absolutely catastrophic for the monarchy if it were to ever come out. So yeah, it's pretty damning in those allegations.
What do you make of that, Richard Kay? Because in my interview with Andrew Lownie, he suggested that this compromising material, were it ever to come to light, would mean the end of the monarchy. I mean, that's quite a statement.
I think that's quite a step. I'm not sure it would. I mean, don't forget, we had an exiled king who got very close to the Nazis before the Second World War. So I'm not so sure that this would have such a deleterious effect on the future of the monarchy. What we don't know, of course, is what these jaw-dropping allegations are, and what kind of information could Andrew have been privy to. Obviously, he knew stuff because of his position within the royal family and in previous years within the Ministry of Defence. But he was not a high-ranking naval officer. Was he ever given access to official secrets? Seems unlikely to me. But yeah, I suppose in the natural course of events, because of the people he met and associated with, he would have acquired quite a treasure chest of stuff.
And of course, he was a trade ambassador for many years. So how party would he have been to trade secrets that would be useful to a foreign power at the time? Very possibly. I mean, everyone who's spoken about it over the years have always said we tried to tell him as little as possible because we clearly didn't trust him.
Well, I remember that's one startling example of his skills as a diplomat was when he tried to talk out a foreign country from buying a fleet of British planes and said it'd be better off renting some. That is not your job. You're here to sell Britain.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think I agree with Rebecca. I don't know how much they entrusted him with His Majesty's government's trade policy.
But of course, any little tidbit could be very
embarrassing.
useful to a foreign power and detrimental to
I'm
our
guessing,
own.
and we haven't seen the full book yet, but I'm guessing some of the compromat material might be to do with what he got up to in his spare time in some of these more remote parts of the world.
Which I think at one time would have been very embarrassing to the monarchy, but I think so much has come out over the years.
Yeah.
I wouldn't quite say they're immune to it, because obviously none of this is edifying for them. But I think now they feel that they have try to kind of ring fence Andrew and now as a private individual, and anything is his problem rather than their problem. So.
I think there is a bigger problem for the monarchy, and it's the continual drip of stuff, and I think that damages the entire institution. However much they try and separate him, they can't escape it. I mean, I don't recommend this, but if you plunge into comments underneath many of the stories which have been written in the Mail this week, you find an astonishing hostility about what this means to the monarchy itself, and that I think would worry them if they took a deep dive into this stuff.
Yeah. I imagine it probably worries William, doesn't it, Richard Eden? If we've talked about, the king at the moment is in a difficult position, seemingly reluctant to take any decisive action. But do you think William might think differently in the long term?
Yes, I think he's more distant. Andrew is his uncle rather than his brother. And I think, hopefully this will be in quite a few years to come. But I think he will take decisive action about quite a few different aspects of the monarchy. But he can't say that at the moment. So it's all quite awkward. But I think you'll find there's a lot of changes will happen.
And what do you think of this that came up in my interview with Andrew Lownie, that we were talking about the question of security and the fact that Andrew still believes he needs proper police protection?
Well, I think he probably does. I mean, I should think there are people out there who would want to physically attack him and assault him, and there aren't nutcases
Prince
around.
Harry aside.
Harry is. This is the whole basis of Harry's case, because he felt that this country was unsafe for his wife, and I think the same must hold true for Andrew.
Mm. The one thing I would add to that is that you say there's a reluctance amongst the king to take action. Actually, I don't think there's a reluctance, but I think there's a sense of frustration about what he can do. I was speaking to someone about this fairly recently, actually, outside of anything to do with the Lownie book. But I said, what is going on? And they said, well, the trouble is, Andrew is now, we've stripped him of everything we can strip him of. He can't use his HRH title, he's not a working member of the royal family. He now is a private individual. And the downside of that means we don't have very much control over him. As long as he pays the rent every month for Royal Lodge, as he's contractually entitled to do, we have no right to ask him where he's getting that money from, as long as he pays it. I think, as long as there's obviously no obvious criminality involved in it. So
I think it rankles the public, though, doesn't it? That he's still a duke, he's still a prince, and
he lives in a mansion.
I agree with all of that, but I'm just trying to explain, I think from their point of view, they feel slightly hamstrung by what they can do now.
I think the problem is part of the issue here is the public want to see some form of punishment.
A consequence.
A consequence for his foolishness. But is it just foolishness, or is it criminality, or has he done some really very bad things? He argues that he's done nothing wrong. He says he never slept with that woman, Virginia Giuffre. But in the court of public opinion, he's been condemned. And he feels that anything like reducing him to the ranks, stripping him of Royal Lodge and sticking him in a tiny cottage on the Windsor estate is tantamount to a form of punishment, and he shouldn't receive that punishment.
And even if, Richard Eden, you get your way and he is stripped of the dukedoms and everything that goes with it, he's been at the centre of espionage incidents, he's had a stalker, he probably would still be entitled to funded police protection.
Yeah, a bit like Liz Truss. Why, an ex-Prime Minister for 5 weeks. I mean,
he will get lifelong. And that's one of Harry's arguments, wasn't it? That she would get lifelong protection and stuff. But Andrew gets no protection now. And actually one of the, I hate to say ruse, but one of the kind of ways that Buckingham Palace have tried to control him is by saying, look, if you downsize from Royal Lodge and move to, say, Frogmore, you're going to be within the ring of steel that surrounds Windsor, so you'll have a certain element of protection. And actually, if you're doing that, the king will privately ensure that you have more of an allowance, because of course he's been stripped of any money now from the king. He obviously gets no public money, but he gets no private money from the king. And he might find his way to funding you with a bit more of private security. But until you do that, until you show willing, he won't do that. And I think they really thought that would force Andrew's hand. Andrew's called their bluff and said, no, trust me, I can pay the money, I don't need any of this. So they're this complete impasse at the moment, and where they go from here is anyone's guess. I think what they're hoping is that Andrew will have to admit within the next couple of years, I can't afford this, and fall on his brother's mercy.
Do you think he needs to be punished, Richard?
Well, I think action certainly needs to be taken on a practical level that I've mentioned.
Yeah.
In terms of Royal Lodge, that's a tricky one. And I think that's a problem for the royal family in general, because the natural person to move in would be Prince William and his family. But, you know, one of William's big initiatives is the one for homelessness. And so, you know, he doesn't want to be moving into a huge mansion.
But he is moving into a huge mansion, isn't he? He's got his new place that he's moving into.
Fort Belvedere.
No, that's not going to happen. I mean, it's been rumoured that it would happen, but I've been told it's not.
Okay, all right then. I'll shut up then. God, this show is fascinating today, but let's hear some of your comments now. We'll start with some from yesterday's interview with Andrew Lownie. Janet Hubert writes, "Wow, Joe, what a guest." I quite agree. Very interesting. Did you feel that you had to look over your shoulder? Who is watching? How many sources did this man have? Thanks for the great show. Now I need more Rebecca and Sockman. That's your new nickname. We've got Garden of Eden.
It could be Richard, you know.
I think we know who it is.
You've got
Mr.
Burlington's
Francis
on
Socks. Now, speaking of Rebecca, Cami Hafner channeled her inner royal editor and said the Lownie show was what is known in the trade as a marmalade dropper. What? I just dropped my jar of marmalade over breakfast, while Michelle Barnard asks this. Interesting to note that the late Queen was very fond of both Andrew and Harry. I loved Queen Elizabeth and don't make this comment mean-spirited, but what's up with that? She was said to be an excellent judge of character. Richard Kay, have you got anything to say to that?
She was an excellent judge of character, Her late Majesty, but she
also had a heart.
But she was a mother,
yes.
and she was devoted to Andrew, and Andrew could do no wrong, but she knew he was a troubled boy, and possibly there were things she did when he was an infant and as a young boy. He was very spoiled. And he grew up very entitled. And
I suppose that he was, you know, he had a different relationship with her to Charles and Anne, didn't he? He was devoted to her and would visit her a lot.
Entirely different relationship, because he was the first child where she actually took time off from royal work to sort of be a mother, and she'd gone through the 1950s, and Campton was fascinated about the new ideas about maternity that were emerging at the beginning of the 1960s, and she followed women's magazines very closely at the time, and consequently she was closely involved, and he wasn't just handed over to nannies and governesses. She was very much involved. But whether that has impacted on the kind of man that Andrew has turned out to be, quite possibly so, because he was indulged and spoiled in a way that Charles wasn't. And perhaps if he'd been treated a bit more like the then Prince of Wales, Andrew would not be the problem he is today. I'm
intrigued by this phrase about the new ideas around maternity in the 60s. What were they like? Being nice to your kids? That was like the new idea.
They were radical, trust me. My mother told me.
Well, a reminder that if you did miss that show, it will play next. And if you want to buy Andrew Lownie's book, we'll put a link to it in the description below. Now, let's hear a couple of comments from last week's fashion special when we revealed the secrets of royal engagement rings. Check that out later as well if you missed it. Melinda Flick had this to say: I think the thing I like the most about the Princess of Wales's clothing is that they always fit so perfectly. You see wrinkles and bumps on nearly everybody else's clothing. Don't look.
I was about to say.
Zoom in, thanks very much. But never on the Princess of Wales's outfits. Truly amazing. She wears her things beautifully. While Deborah Wolfeld said, "Thank you for a different kind of PC. I vote for more. There is so much royal family history to explore. Palaces, fashions, tiaras, art. This shows it's time to branch out." Well, to Deborah and to others who said similar things, we are planning lots more, so make sure you are subscribed to the Daily Mail Royals YouTube channel so you don't miss any of them. And please do keep those comments coming in, and may I ask, do keep them as respectful as our panellists always are to each other, and you might find that yours get read out as well. Now, let's go back to my panel now. This week, the other big story was we saw a new report into the scandal at Prince Harry's Sentebale charity. Now, Rebecca, when the investigation launched, Prince Harry was said to have welcomed it, saying it would, quote unquote, unveil the truth. But do you think he will like the truth that it has revealed?
He likes one truth, but I'm not sure he's very happy about the rest. In fact, it's not often you get a report that neither side are very happy with. Maybe it's just useful to explain because people might remember vaguely what happened, but without the detail. there was a massive falling out between the chair of the charity, Sophie Chanduka, and Prince Harry as patron, and the board of trustees, many of whom were long-term friends of his. There were a lot of claims about the direction the charity was going in, allegations of mismanagement from both sides. It was reported to the Charity Commission, which is the kind of government-sanctioned watchdog in this country, to investigate. And their report suddenly came out this week, to probably most of us by surprise. We had to act pretty quickly on it. And it basically found fault on both sides and said, there was catastrophic errors within the charity setup that allowed such a toxic private dispute to be played out so publicly. The one thing that Harry will have been happy about is that one of the most explosive allegations made by Sophie Chanduka, that he was basically at the helm of a widespread campaign of bullying, misogyny and misogynoir.
Bullying at scale was the famous quote, yes.
That the charity said they had found no evidence of that. Now, that's not the same as being cleared, and I've seen a lot of reports saying Harry's been cleared. What they've said is we've got no evidence of widespread bullying, but they've also confirmed it is not their job as a regulator to investigate individual allegations of bullying, and that's something Sentebale and Sophie Chanduka are really trying to flag, to say, look, there are still ongoing issues for us, and these issues may yet be taken further.
And it is still going on, isn't it? It's like, despite the Charity Commission's basically beseeching both sides to stop playing it all out in public, it seems like that's going to carry on.
My phone was going crazy yesterday because both sides are very angry about this. Harry feels very strongly that he's been forced out of his baby. The charity is set up in memory of his late mother. He feels it's been a hostile takeover. Whereas Sentebale still say, we still allege that there was, they whole-scale mismanaged this charity, and that we came in at a point where it was in quite a lot of trouble. And we've tried to do our best in making it more African-centric and to try and professionalise the fundraising techniques that it was using, rather than just doing it with occasional polo matches. So unfortunately, this is still rumbling, and where it goes next, goodness only knows.
Can you imagine the fuming in Montecito right now, Richard Kay, from Harry?
I can, because as Rebecca says, this charity is so central to Harry's well-being and what he's attempted to achieve with his life, and it's all over now. And he and Meghan must be wondering what on earth they're going to do next. Where can he pick up the pieces from what is, I would say, probably the most important part of his princely life?
It's interesting, isn't it? Harry saying he wants to look at new ways of continuing to support Lesotho and Botswana, but given this scandal, and the one involving another of his charities, African Parks, is the best thing he can do to step away from all of this?
I mean, let's be clear, it's totally devastating for Harry. I mean, I think, he was hoping that this report would clear him, and that's what, the spin that his PR people have been putting on it. But in fact, it hasn't at all. He's left, as I say, having to sort of contemplate starting a new charity or something. This is one of his two babies. There's this, and then there's Invictus, which, is the other organisation he founded. And it does makes me wonder if, Invictus will want to keep their involvement with Harry, because, look what it can bring.
Well, there's no talk of, there's no sort of like sense of ill will around Invictus, though, is there?
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, for example, what we've been speaking about over recent weeks is that Invictus is coming to Britain in 2 years' time. Then already there's all the speculation about what does this mean for the royal family, who's going to come. It makes it very awkward for what is a really great organisation working with injured former servicemen. They may take the view that it would be easier if Harry wasn't so closely involved with it.
Of course, what is heartbreaking is one has to wonder how the Sentebale charity can remain sort of like, a healthy, buoyant charity with all of this going on.
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult. I mean, they have now, it seems, all over as far as their royal founder and patron is concerned, and they're going to have to reinvent themselves. But it was, it was Harry's charity, the whole reason why he set it up, as Rebecca discussed, in memory of his mother. I mean, those links aren't going to go away. In fact, they're the only way the charity is going to exploit them for money-raising purposes. I mean, it all boiled down to money. This is what it was all about. They were various sides took different positions on how funding should be driven, and that's what led to the bust-up. I think it's going to be really hard for it to continue in its current form without the Harry association.
It's tragic, isn't it, when you think that, really, what must it be like to be a beneficiary of such an important charity, just watching all of this play out?
I mean, so let's be clear that Sophie Chanduka was implementing what she'd been asked to do. So she was told to make it into more of an Africa-centred charity. They wanted to get away from the idea of sort of, rich Europeans playing polo and giving money, and to make it more of a sort of, give it more firmer foundations in Africa. So that's what she was trying to do. But with Harry, over in America, and then she was asked to try and raise money there. I think she's been given a very difficult task.
Indeed. Well,
I was going to say that I've been out to Lesotho with Harry twice, maybe even 3 times, but certainly twice I can remember over the years. And one, he was kind of very young in his 20s, and it was hard not to feel enthused by his passion for what he was trying to do out there. Clearly, his experience there during his gap year, after which he decided to set up this charity helping AIDS orphans and children affected by HIV. You had to be enthused by his passion and what he was trying to do there. The trouble is, as the Charity Commission said this week, passion is something that drives the charity sector, and it can be a very good force for good, but passion in the wrong hands can become a really negative force too. And we've got 2 opposing sides who are very passionate about the way things should be done. And as you rightly say, it's the charity that's going to suffer, because people I spoke to yesterday have said to me that Sentebale have to publish their annual accounts by the end of the month. They're very late doing it, and they've basically been given a cut-off point. And they are predicting they think it's financially going to have tanked over the last year. And I've written a big piece about this in the Mail, and the conclusion I come to at the end is that if that is happening, nobody's a winner out of that, because Harry doesn't win because he's seen his lifelong work go down the pan. The charity doesn't win. The children it's trying to help don't win. But the trouble is, it kind of leaves this sense around Harry that there is a level of toxicity of things that he's involved in, and he is trying to set himself up as a global philanthropic force. And that, how do you square the two? And no one comes out of this, unfortunately, shining. And
it's not unfair of me to say that Harry, his reactions are often quite incendiary and toxic and angry in themselves. It's like it's not a great trail, is it?
No, it's not. And this is why the Charity Commission made a point of saying, look, stop playing out your personal problems to both sides in the public eye. This whole thing erupted publicly because those close to Harry and the trustees briefed the Times newspaper in March that this whole debacle was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah, after I put in calls, because we had the story, and they didn't want it coming out in the Daily Mail.
Oh, okay.
So that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then obviously the spin put on that version of events prompted Sophie Chanduka to go on television.
Yes.
And say, actually, no, from my point of view, this is what happened, and make those particularly incendiary claims about Harry personally. And then it's just spiralled and spiralled and spiralled, and the Charity Commission have tried to rein it
ugly.
in.
Yeah.
And you're right, it is ugly, and no one actually is winning out of this.
Well, sticking with the Sussexes, Richard Eden, what's this piece you've written about Meghan? Tell us all about it.
Oh, this is ties in with an episode of Reading the Royals. And since Harry and Meghan quit royal duties, Meghan's been at pains to stress how much effort she put into being a member of the royal family and observing all the protocols and etiquette and everything. And so I've been looking at all the times that she breached royal protocol.
You are an imp, aren't you?
During her 22 months as a working royal. And my goodness, there were loads of them. And they're really interesting. I mean, most of them actually involve clothes. And it seems that Meghan did often make statements with things she would wear as sort of making a point. And I think there's a lot that can be read into it. So well, worth a read.
That sounds quite juicy. So we'll put a link to that in the description below. And also, if you did miss the latest Reading the Royals, be sure to check that out. And we'll put a link to that below too. But if you did miss it, it might be because you're not subscribed to the channel. Just saying, I know I go on, but you don't want to miss it. It might be time to press that subscribe button. I promise you won't regret it. To the Waleses now, remember them. Rebecca, we learnt that William and Catherine enjoyed a Greek holiday, a family holiday.
They have. There was a story in the Mail on Sunday about it a couple of weeks ago, and they have been on a yacht cruising around Kefalonia, which is a particularly beautiful part of the world. It seems like Catherine's parents, Michael and Carol, were there, all three children, William, Catherine as well, and I think they went for about a week or so, and there were various sightings on them around the islands for people who swore they saw them. No pictures, so no proof, but it was reported widely in the Greek press as well.
Well, interesting you say that, because obviously Richard Edom, nobody here denies the Wales' right to a private life, but the story was strange because the British media weren't meant to report it, but as you say, you could read about it in all the Greek press and actually social media and other international press.
Yes, I mean, it is a difficult situation because I think Prince William and Catherine, they want privacy, and everyone understands they don't want to have their holidays ruined by photographers taking pictures of them and this sort of thing.
Sounds like they did anyway.
So they want to have a private holiday. But I think also they don't want it to be reported even after the event, which makes things difficult. But in the modern age where, people can just Google, even with a sort of AI overview comes up of William and Kate holiday, and reports will come up from the Greek press. It's very hard then to have nothing in the British papers. And there's also the question of, how are they doing it? Are they going on a private jet? We've sat here in this programme and criticised Harry and Meghan for their use of private jets. So we certainly wouldn't want to be seen to be hypocritical by not mentioning the method of travel that William and Catherine might use. So there's those elements that are important.
What was their method of travel?
Well, it's reported it was a private jet.
Right. That's an interesting juxtaposition with the Earthshot Prize, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I have seen noted actually with William in particular, especially talking about green issues, which are always a very difficult one for the royal family.
Well, I mean, nobody can live a 1,000% green life.
And his father, the Prince of Wales, had it equally in spades, before him, especially given his environmental credentials. What I think is notable about William is his tone has slightly shifted in recent years, and rather than saying, don't do this, don't do that, what he's trying to focus on is saying, if you are going to go on holiday, say, which in itself is not an environmentally friendly thing to do, try and ensure that you do it in the best way possible. So I think the tone of what he's saying has been less lecturing and trying to encourage people.
They did definitely have a holiday in the best way possible, but just not the way that you're describing it in environmental terms. Sound like a great holiday to me.
Yeah, I think we'd all love one like that.
But Richard Kay, the British royal family, they have, it would be fair to say, a mixed history with yachts, don't they?
Oh dear, yes, yes. And of course, it's not that long ago when summer holidays were an important part of the royal calendar, and that we, the press, the media, were invited to record them. There was a buy-off in all this. They would be left alone if they agreed to do a photo call or speak, which Charles and Diana, and with William and Harry as small boys, did regularly for about 7 or 8 years. But that's all changed. I understand, as Richard said, William's desire for privacy, but there is a cost here, and there's a line which they're in danger of crossing over, which is they're moving into areas of censorship to try and protect their privacy at all costs. And we're going to end up looking just like the media did before the Second World War, when the British newspapers did not report on the budding love affair of the then king and his twice divorced mistress, Mrs. Simpson, but the American press did, and international press did. I mean, that was just preposterous. And that's why when it all came out, it came as a profound shock to the British population. So no one wants to see that sort of thing happen. And I just think William has got to be careful about how he patrols this privacy.
And to be realistic that he's a public figure, a publicly funded figure.
Yeah, I mean, there is an element of cost because we pay for the protection officers who go with him. We pick up their bills and pay their salaries. But going back to your point about yachts, yes, yachts have produced many happy and rather controversial moments. So, the last time that Charles took Diana on a yacht, it was ludicrously portrayed by the palace as a second honeymoon. It couldn't have been further from the truth. I mean, they were working out the divorce details on the boat. But there we are. And,
I love Richard's insight on stuff like this. It's
If you're
brilliant.
going to work out a divorce, that's quite a nice setting.
Diana spent the entire time hiding in a lifeboat, underneath a tarpaulin, in tears most of the time.
Amazing.
Oh dear.
That's a recipe for seasickness.
But Charles had a penchant for rich men's yachts, as we know over the years.
If I had the opportunity, I would.
And he seems to be inherited by his son.
What about this story, Richard Eden, about Prince George and a certain request from the shore?
Oh yeah, this was a rather cheeky little story in the Mail on Sunday. They just reported, it was from a reporter who'd been out there speaking to different people, and apparently a member of staff had been sent ashore on one of the islands with a special dietary request for Prince George. And the reporter did point out this particular island was the only one with a branch of McDonald's. So there was some speculation as to what that particular dietary
when that
request...
craving hits, it hits.
Might
What can
be.
you do?
I'm gobsmacked there is any McDonald's on any Greek islands, to be honest. That
Well,
was not my
there
memory of
there
them,
you are.
but-
You'll know for the future.
Yeah.
But we have known in the past that members of the royal family have enjoyed a McDonald's. In fact, I'll never forget seeing a picture of Prince Harry slumped at it was a drive-through McDonald's in Plymouth, eating a Big Mac while sort of sitting on the curb.
It's quite a grim image.
It wasn't very flattering.
Tell you what, I really fancy a Big Mac now. Do you think I could request from High Street Kensington that somebody come in right now?
Let's go and do a group lunch after.
Yeah, exactly.
We always
I
go to
love
the
that.
fine places, don't we?
Now, to some happy news. Now, Rebecca, this is so funny because I remember on the Royal Special, you said, well, of course, we probably won't see another royal wedding now forever.
I said of a senior member
I
of the
agree.
royal
Yes,
family.
I'm just teasing
yeah.
you. But of course, now Princess Anne is to get a new daughter.
Well, I think you could look at it the alternative way is Palace Confidential speaks and the royal family listens.
No, well, we'll show her. Here's a wedding. No, it's Peter Phillips. He's got some happy news, right?
Peter Phillips, I think, barely hours after we recorded our programme, announced that he was happily engaged to his girlfriend of a year or so, Harriet Spurling, who I have to say knocks it out of the ballpark fashion-wise, and I think there's definitely a programme.
She's a proper glamour
in
queen.
that. I love what she wears. I think she looks great, and we saw some lovely engagement photographs. Very happy, and I think she is someone that she comes. Actually, there was a brilliant piece by one of my colleagues, Beth Hale, just taking a look at who this lady is and her background, because it was quite clear from the Ascot appearances recently that something like this was on the cards.
Yes.
And actually, it was a lovely, lovely piece about her family. She comes from a really lovely family, not too far away from Gatcombe Park. She's a single mother, but she's working as a paediatric nurse in the NHS, and she's written about her experiences. Everyone speaks incredibly highly of her. And it's nice that he's been through a few trials and tribulations of his own with a marriage that didn't work, and they seem to be incredibly happy.
It's lovely, isn't it? And it's interesting. It's obviously, famously, we talk about it a lot. Not the easiest family in the world to join, Richard Eden, but she seems popular within the family.
Oh, definitely. I mean, we saw that vividly at Royal Ascot, where she was, riding in the royal procession, and like you say, I think we knew an announcement might be afoot at that point.
Yeah.
Often I always say with the royals, it's not what they say, it's what they do or what they don't say, and you pick up the signs. And again, a member of even the wider family wouldn't introduce someone into that kind of inner circle. And we saw pictures of the king giving her a warm kiss and Zara. We wouldn't see that if there wasn't something more permanent on the cards.
What struck me is that how comfortable she looked, sort of like chatting and giggling with the king.
Well, that's what's so great about my colleague's piece, is that they say, you look at her background and she's almost posher than he is. So I think because she was portrayed as this, paediatric nurse working in the NHS, aka a normal background for the members of the royal family. She works very hard, but she also comes from, a pretty well-to-do background herself. I think her mother was one of, was it Country Life's Girls in Pearls from back in the day?
Posher than the king.
Yes, exactly.
I'll have your head for that, Rebecca.
I think the key to this, and I hope for their future happiness, of course, is she won't be saddled with a title. She's married, the plain Peter Phillips, she'll just be Mrs. Peter Phillips.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, let's stick with the Gatcombe Park side of the family at the moment, because it emerged this week that a man who attempted to kidnap Princess Anne in 1974 had been quietly released from prison in 2019. He'd spent
6 years ago.
45 years in prison. Tell us about this and remind us quickly of the story.
Very quickly, it was in 1974. The newly married Princess Anne and her then husband, Captain Mark Phillips, were returning to the palace from an engagement. They had the usual people with them, one bodyguard, lady in waiting, and this man called Ian Ball managed to force their car to a halt on the Mall, came out brandishing a gun and started firing, shot her driver, shot her police bodyguard, Jim Beaton. His own gun jammed, and he then tried to get Princess Anne out of the car, and this is when she uttered this famous remark, which has echoed down the years ever since, when he said, "You're coming with me, not bloody likely," said Her Royal Highness. Anyway, the man was subsequently overpowered by a member of the public, a boxer, who absolutely hit him square on the jaw, and police were able to seize him, and he spent many, many years in a rather disturbed state in a hospital prison. But he's now out and about.
Broadmoor, I think he was in for a while, wasn't he?
Right.
Yeah.
Anyway, it all has come flooding back because the Mail discovered that he had been secretly released on some kind of license and was living a life not far away in West London, and was still maintaining his innocence and passing out leaflets to people at a local railway station.
Wow.
He still seems to be slightly obsessed, if I may, with what happened to him and the royal family.
Gosh, it's interesting, isn't it, Rebecca? Because famously, royal security and the way it was done was significantly overhauled and upgraded since then. But ironically, Princess Anne's security is still quite low key.
Very low key. She doesn't have protection officers with her unless she's on official duties. And actually, I should say, that is the way she likes it. She likes to live a very private life, and when she needs to undertake royal duty, she will have the requisite police officers with her. And it was a really great piece of journalism actually by my colleague Neil Sears on the Mail, because he went out, investigated, got this person to speak to him to get a flavour of whether he was still, as Richard says, obsessed with the royal family as he was. And there are some quite troubling allegations in his ramblings. And it reminded me of a gentleman called Di Davis, who was the former head of royalty protection at Scotland Yard. He has appeared on this programme previously. And he has always said to me that the biggest threat to the royal family is not what people think it is. It is not, a sniper, or it is not someone with a bomb, because there are very good procedures in place to hopefully deal with that. It is these fixated individuals. And
who are largely untraceable.
Exactly, and can melt back into the crowd. There's not a big network around them. There's not, a network that the security services might get whispers of through monitoring phones or, internet chat groups. These are people acting off their own steam. And he always said, there was a list, I think he said, of about 300 that were genuinely considered to pose a life or death threat to the royal family. So I think it's
we
a
should
reminder
say
of
that this guy Ball wanted to kidnap Anne for ransom,
Yes.
and he thought the Queen would pay 2 or 3 million, depending on which version you read. So it was there was something beyond a fixation with the member of the royal family.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Princess Anne, a lot of you were asking in the comments about how you could find the special coin that the Royal Mint is creating for her 75th birthday. So we put a link to buy that special memento in the description below. And hear that? Yes, it is time to celebrate our unsung royal hero of the week, Richard Eden. This week's hero is another four-legged one.
Yes, this is Tyrone, who is a 19-year-old Windsor Grey, who's done 14 years of loyal service for the royal family, pulling carriages, and he's excelled himself. Well, it's finally come for well-deserved retirement. So he's moving to the country.
I was going to say, what does that involve for Royals?
Moving to the country and taking it easy, I hope, and having a lovely life. So
if that's realism, it's not one of those euphemisms. We're sending them to a beautiful farm.
No, I think it genuinely is. Putting his hooves up in a field.
No glue factories, please.
No, he'll be well looked after.
Yeah.
He'll be well looked after, and it sounds like it's very well deserved.
Well, I think it's a good point, isn't it, that we talk a lot about the pomp and pageantry of the royal family and how we love big occasions like, trooping and state opening and things like that. And of course, none of those things would be possible if it wasn't for these incredible animals and the people who look after them. And, rarely do we see a hoof out of place, I think, at events like that.
Indeed, they're beautiful animals. Well, we talked about royals on yachts earlier, and that gave us a little idea. Why not look back through the photographic archive to find some of the best pictures of the royal family on yachts over the years? Royals and yachts, always a heady combination. And I hope you enjoyed that. A reminder that up next is the interview that you will want to watch this week. Prince Andrew's biographer, Andrew Lownie, talking about some of the extraordinary stories in his biography of Andrew and Sarah Ferguson. You can click here for that. We'll put a link to buy the book in the description below. Just time now to say thank you to my guest Rebecca and the two Richards, and of course to you for watching, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.